No mai haere mai to the Whāki podcast, which invites people like you and our guests today from all walks of life to converse about various access to equity within the context of Aotearoa. We're inviting everybody to share their lived experiences in an effort to identify common threads within support systems, social networks, and knowledge that uplifts the collective human experience. Kelsey?
This season, we are exploring what does equity and knowledge look like for various communities coexisting within one society. And as Tauiwi and Aotearoa, we recognise the mana whenua and kaitiaki of these lands. Malusil and I have experienced most of our growth in the Waikato and want to honour Ngāti Hawa, Ngāti Mahana, and Ngāti Wairere. We are grateful for the connections our whakapapa weave through for us to be able to connect and grow with community through the Whāki kaupapa. Malusil and I would also like to honour our queer ancestors who fought for our rights and visibility as equitable citizens of the world. Kia ora, my name is Kelsey and I use they, them pronouns.
Noa ngā tata o te wasa Malusil, Joseph Talanoa Manise, mo identify he, him, they, she, all of these things. So my name is Malusil and I identify with all of the pronouns. And you already know we like to gift it off to our guests today. So please introduce to us who you are and what your pronouns.
Perfect. Hi guys. I'm Lisa, and my pronouns are she, her. And to introduce myself, I would probably start with I'm a mum. I've got 2 boys, and I'm a business owner. I run a business over in the Bay of Plenty, and I'm here because I really believe in the Whāki kaupapa, and I'm so grateful to have met you guys, and just to hopefully, like, my intention in being here today in this episode is to hopefully offer a bit of knowledge that I've gained throughout my life and my experiences, so that someone in the community can hopefully draw strength from it or have like a little nugget or tidbit they can take away to help them on their journey through life too. So that's me.
Beautiful. My God, I'm so stoked.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So, tell us, Lisa, from your worldview and from your experience, how do you know us? How are you connected to us? How did you first discover Kelsey and myself or the podcast?
Okay, all right. So, I was reflecting on this, and I actually remember. So at Ink Drop, the business that I run, we worked on the Seed Waikato branding. And so we'd do work here and there, or I'd receive like the newsletters every week or every month. And I remember seeing Malu in them. I think it was when you're emceeing events. And I remember noticing you thinking, this guy looks great. I would love to know this guy. Just, I think even through a photo, you had such amazing energy. But it wasn't until, I don't think I ever made that connection until recently that I was like, I think that's the first time I ever saw you. But the first time I ever heard both of you, I didn't even make that connection until long after I met you. So I first heard you both in Gemma Rose Take Your Meds podcast, her first ever podcast.
Go listen to that episode.
Shout out to Gemma. So good. So good. But I never made that connection either. So I knew you both before I actually knew you. But it took me a while to connect you both to knowing you. And then, of course, through rebranding Whāki was when we really made like connection with each other, which was really cool. And I'm so grateful to have met you both. And I was thinking about this, and it was my first, because like in this podcast today, I want to share like 5 top things in my life that have been offerings of knowledge or how I've received knowledge in my life and share them. But I thought I'd kick it off with a piece of knowledge that I received from you both before I met you.
Oh yeah, please.
Okay, jump straight in. Go for it.
All right, let's do it. So so when we do any branding at Ink Drop, if I'm working on a project, I normally get really immersive in the world of the client. So at the time I was working on Gemma Rose's branding. And so I was just listening to her podcast all the time, getting into what she was doing. And so that was when I first listened to her episode 1 podcast with the two of you. And I was climbing the mount, listening to it. And I remember thinking, I didn't know it was you two at the time, but I remember loving it and there being so many good takeaways, and there's amazing takeaways on all of her podcasts with her guests. But it wasn't until I was going through a challenging time in my life that, I don't know why, but I felt called to listen to that same podcast again. I think it was after I made the connection that I knew that was you two and that I now knew you. And Malu said something in the podcast that is like one of my top things that I draw on for strength from a sharing of knowledge. And it was, I am, I can, and I will. And I shared this with you, Malu, at the time, and I was like, wow, that's so beautiful. But my reflection was, knowledge can look so different depending on the headspace you're in, or a challenge you're facing. Depending on where you're at in your life, you can receive things differently. Because that first time I listened to the podcast, that didn't resonate, that didn't hit home. It wasn't super #potent. But listening to it second time round, I was like, wow, that's so what I needed at this point in time in my life, and it really helped me through a really challenging time in my life. So, muchas gracias to you both. But yeah, so what did I write down? It was that, knowledge will come to you at the time that you most need it, and it's your ability to be open to receiving that knowledge that counts.
Wow. Yes. Can you just repeat that one more time? Because I feel like that is so potent. That is so #potent.
It was, I'll try not to drop some. So I'm such a boomer millennial. I'll try not to drop the hashtag. Knowledge will come to you at the times that you most need it. But it's your ability to be open to the sharing of knowledge that matters. Like opening yourself up to receiving knowledge that's offered. Yeah, just because I heard that exact same podcast at 2 different times, I wasn't receptive to it the first time, but it totally was game-changing for me the second time.
Wow. There's so many gifts in that. There's so many gifts in that. I'm curious, Kelsey, what are you hearing?
When you're talking about that, it reminds me of something that was said at Te Rautini in the first time that I went back after my trip to the South Island. And it was something that resonated at the time. And I go back to it because it lands differently when I'm in different spaces and places. And it was kia tau te rangi marie, which means let peace settle. You have to let it, and you can, and then it will settle. But that letting and that surrender, and then that receivership of it settling, that's what your kōrero reminded me of. So kia tau te rangi marie, let peace settle.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa.
And you, Malu, what comes through for you on that?
No, I'm in deep appreciation, and I feel like I'm in a space right now where that is coming back to me in a different lens. So thank you for actually bringing that back to me, because, it's interesting how you learn from the different embodiments of your whakaaro, or of your thoughts, or of your words. And I feel like your perspective and the way that you offered that to me today actually is inviting me to go and listen to that podcast again, to see how I relate to that maluseo from here. So I'm actually going to take that up, and I'm actually going to take that challenge and go and listen to see what I'm hearing about myself in the 21st.
Yeah.
Well, in July at least, July 2022.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. And yeah, I really heard relationship. I really heard relationship, because it's to me, I'm hearing relationship between you and what was said, the relationship between the first listen and the second listen, the relationship between your frameworks, your frame of mind at the beginning of your first lesson and your listening and your second listening, because I'm like, wow.
Yeah, I love that. I never pulled that apart from that. Even like my relationship to you, you know, like or you both, like not making that connection. Maybe I was more receptive to like really soaking it all in because I had a really great relationship with you both. The second time I listened to it, it's really interesting. Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Thank you for that. That was a beautiful, like, if I can't see, that was a beautiful koha.
Oh, nice. I was chatting with a friend earlier this week and I gave him a compliment and he said, I'm practicing on receiving. And I said, I'm practicing offering, like offering, you know. And I thought that's so nice. Like, yeah.
That is so good.
Yes. So I'm practicing on offering.
Thank you. I'm in full receivership. I'm in full receivership lately. And thank you.
Keep
Thank
it coming.
you. All right.
Cool.
So,
Okay. So
what is knowledge to you? How is knowledge embodied in your worldview? How do you relate to knowledge? What is knowledge to Lisa?
right. So I have 5 shares and it's 5 things that have happened at sort of like from the start of my life to now. And some are sort of personal or like family based growing up, and some ones professional. So I thought hopefully there's something in there for everybody. So I thought I would start with my childhood. So I grew up in Taumarunui, so it's in the heart of the King Country, really small town. But loved growing up there. It was like the best place to grow up, and I still consider it home. And I grew up in a really big family, so I'm one of 6 kids, and I'm second to last. And I was reflecting on where did knowledge first start in shaping me to who I am today. And I think it came from my siblings, my family growing up. And my first sort of takeaway or tidbit is that knowledge, or my reflection was that knowledge can be shared or received in so many different ways and forms. But I think my first experience with knowledge was through observation. It could be almost like subconscious or programming from a young age from your closest tribe, your first, circle. So I was thinking about like growing up, because I've got an older brother and then 3 sisters, me, and then a little sister, and each one of them has given me so much knowledge in my life growing up. And I was thinking back to it, like my brother, growing up, he would play video games with me and my little sister, so we grew up playing Age of Empires and Quake, which wasn't sort of normal for like a young girl. But I loved that, and I loved that time with him. And then my older sister Anna and Kelly, they were almost like 2 mothers for me, 2 extra mums for me growing up. So Kelly, she taught me about care and compassion, and yes, so my 2 older sisters were like mums. So yeah, my older sister Kelly should paint me pictures that I'd stick on my wall growing up. So she really taught me about care and like not gifts. I was listening to an episode of Bridget around access, love languages.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That's me.
For your pet, right?
I'm kidding. Oh my gosh, no, I'm kidding. But like that, she would give me handmade gifts, and like that gift for me was really special. Like she'd paint. I was really into like princesses and whatnot growing up, and I remember she painted this beautiful princess castle picture for me, and I had it on my wall growing up. So like really beautiful. And then my sister Anna, she was like honestly probably more like, she really sat in that motherly role for me. She took me shopping for my first bra. She was amazing. And she offered me a piece of advice growing up where I remember complaining about studying for exams. It's been like, oh, I don't want to be doing this. And my friends were out not studying. And she said to me, like your future self will be so grateful for the hard work you're putting in now. And I remember that was a totally new concept to me. It must have been like 15. Yeah. And just thinking, yes. And I think that's something I've carried with me throughout my life is like what you're doing now, don't frame it so negatively. Like your future self will really be so grateful for the current Lisa for doing the mahi now. And then my sister Sarah, she's just one up from me. She was like the nagging sibling. So she would always be like pestering me, nagging me. And at the time I hated it. And she would always pester me like, in your school holidays, in your like uni or tech break, work. Don't just sit around at home doing nothing, like work. And she would be like that, the one nudging me to do it. And I did. And it's not until adulthood that I reflect on that, and I'm so grateful to her because I think that instilled a, like hard work ethic in me from a young age. And then my little sister Gemma, she was like my twin, and I was never alone growing up. So just having her with me all the time, I always had someone to sort of grow with, and I was never lonely growing up. So like my biggest reflection is like, I'm so grateful to mum and dad because the biggest gift to me were my siblings growing up. And they really shaped who I think they really shaped who I am today.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, so like your tribe, your first tribe who's programmed you subconsciously, I think it's not until you sit and sort of look back and reflect you can see all of the little things that they shaped you into who you are. And I was lucky that I had 5 of them, as well as my parents. And after having 2 kids, there's no way in hell I'm having 6. Like, kudos to mum and dad.
Yeah.
I don't know how they did it.
Yeah, that's a lot of children.
That's a lot of children. It's a lot of kids.
Yeah.
And I've met like one of my sister's friends. She's also one of 6 kids, and she's also second to last. And she says to me, like, I'm lucky I exist. If it was me, if it was me having children, like I wouldn't exist. I wouldn't have that many children. Which is another really interesting concept. But yes, so that's my first one, is that, the knowledge that you can receive without even knowing you're receiving it, just from your tribe.
Beautiful.
Yes.
I had similar experiences growing up. Like, I'm the youngest of 3, and then it goes me, my sister, and then our brother, who's the oldest. And my parents separated when I was 14. But before that, even, like, they would go traveling, like go overseas, all these kinds of things. And luckily, my siblings were old enough that they would just like look after me. And so we would have these great times where, like, my brother would take me out at night as like a 14-year-old, like out when he went to, when T Straight was a thing in Hamilton. I go to T Straight with my brother, and then my sister would make sure that I'm like up and ready for school and all these kind of things. So my sister also is like a second mum to me, and I'm super grateful for her and like all the little lessons that she instilled in me. And also my brother taught me how to play Age of Empires when I was a kid too.
Yes.
It was so good. But yeah, I totally resonate with what you're sharing.
Love Age.
Yeah.
I miss the days where I had time to play Age of Empires. Have like massive LAN parties.
Yeah. Like, hey guys, I'm just going out for a girls' night.
Sorry, girls' night.
Right now.
Oh, funny.
We can do that later, for sure.
I'm glad. There were no other females that were into this growing up, so I'm loving this.
Yeah.
I was just with stinky boy flatmates.
Oh yeah, I definitely am thankful for what you shared as well, Lisa, because I can see how I was the nagging brother for my older brother, because and he's 6 years above me, so I feel like our relationship was interesting because like we just were on different vibes. Like, the age separation, just we were just on different vibes. Like I'm like, yay world, and he's like, no. Like we need to make sure that you don't, do something to hurt yourself or others. And I'm like, no, but I love well,
Mm.
you get to go out, and I'm like, I had no concept of like protection or like safety because I just felt safe everywhere. And my brother was
Mm.
just like, no, you're not coming on the picnic. No, you're not coming on the sports exchange. No, you're not old enough. And in my head, I'm like, but everyone else is going, and everyone else is older than me. Like I had no concept of age. Like I'm like, if everyone's going, I'm going. Like, and just like I was fully
That's so good.
justified in being like, yeah, I'm going. So I resonate with what you were sharing about your sister that's just above you. I was definitely that, but I also love that you were able to learn from her as well.
Yeah, and we're
Mm.
super close. And it's funny, she's 6 years older than
Oh
me as
yeah!
well. Yeah,
Oh,
funny.
wow!
Yeah,
Hey, well,
yes, she is. Yeah.
I'm like, wow.
So we can relate there. Yeah, and I remember the same things, wanting to just hang out with her all the time, and her being like, no. You know?
Yeah.
But then I was blessed in that I had my little sister Gemma who I could hang out with. But we're super close as
Mm, mm.
adults, and I'm super grateful for her pestering and nagging me, because I needed it. You need that person in your life who pushes you to fulfill your potential, and she did that for me from a really young age.
Oh,
Beautiful.
Mm. Yeah.
Did you see her do that for your other siblings as well?
I think I don't know, good question. I think she might have done it also for my other little sister. She's always like almost like your coach, like, come on, like, do this, or, encouraging us. But I think I wore the brunt of it, I feel.
Mm.
I'll have to talk to my little sister about that one. Really good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
yes,
Should I springboard
yes,
into number
please.
2?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So this is the one I'm afraid I'm going to get emotional about.
No.
Might need to pause again.
It's
We'll
okay.
see how we go.
We're good. Take your time.
So one thing growing up that I think through observing my sisters, really, I would observe my sisters in their relationships, and I think that subconsciously really helped me in my life, even as a little kid, just watching. But I'd also see partners come and go in my sisters' lives, and there was one partner who came into my sister's life, and his name was Moses. So Moses went out with my older sister Anna, and he was around for 4 or 5 years while I was growing up, and he was diagnosed with cancer at a really young age, but I didn't quite understand that at the time because I was quite little. I was maybe 7 or 8, and he passed away last year. But he taught me so much in the way that he lived his life. And I was reflecting on this with my older sister, my naggy sister, love you, Sarah. And I said, why does it, because it really does still hurt. He was amazing in that, despite being like drawn this card in life, this like awful card, he always showed up as being so positive, and like he was like sunshine energy, like such a positive, happy person. And I think he really left, like everybody who knew him really deeply loved him. He left such a positive, in the time that he had here, he left such a positive mark. He embodied such an awesome sunshine, happiness. And I'll just go to my notes. get over myself. Yeah, and so Moses taught me to, he taught me that the greatest gift you can give anybody is time, because he had so little. I ended up living till he was 40, but he, at the time, he didn't know that. You know, he was a young teenager when he found out. And I was thinking about, I was like, because he spent heaps of time with me and my little sister growing up, and I was thinking, why would this guy want to hang out with his girlfriend's little sisters? And he would have wanted to be with his mates, you know, but he never, like, if we ever wanted to hang out with him, he would, and he'd do so many cool things with us, like take us motorbike riding out of Ofongo Bush. He would always take us to go get ice cream, and he would always take us to go get country fried chicken.
Yum.
You caught me.
He was so
You caught me
good.
there.
He was so good. Like, and I think, like, my inner child, I think that's why I still get so upset, because my inner child misses him. But yeah, he taught me that the greatest gift you can give is time, and to think about, like, with the life you've been gifted, how do you want to show up?
Beautiful question.
Okay, you guys talk now. Lisa's done.
Tapping out.
I'm tapping out. I'm on
I
the
just
verge
want
of
to-
Kim Kardashian snot crying.
Oh my god.
Oh dear.
I just want to honor you, Lisa, for having the courage to share that story. Like, we know that that's not something that's always easy to talk about. But I feel really honored that you're willing to share yourself and Moses with us. And thank you for speaking life and honor into his name. Like, that's an
Yeah, that was
incredible thing that you can do for him in his memory.
No, thanks. Yeah, I was thinking, do I want to share it? And I was thinking, no, I think he touched so many people's lives. Damn, stop talking this. Yeah, no thanks, Kelsey. It's hard, and I hope I haven't fully embarrassed myself.
No.
But yeah, shout out to Mo Man.
No, and I really appreciate the way that you offer that koha. Because to me, I'm like, I'm a nerd for these type of conversations. So I actually really deeply resonate and relate with what you've shared, but also it's helped me see that that's actually a part of my value system, giving people my time. And I don't honor it enough. And I feel like that's something that because I'm always wanting to give something extravagant and something that's meant, like, materially there. And I do sometimes, but I feel like for me, one of my love languages is quality time. So, so for me, I just need you to be in proximity to me. And I've actually learned to stretch that, given that Kelsey is all the way somewhere else in the world. Um, it's gifted me opportunity to be like, hey, in this moment, I get to share quality time with you. And yeah, that's such a beautiful gift you've just given us. And yep, the delivery is, to me, it's exactly what I needed. So I'm thankful that you're giving me Kim K study post here, because that's exactly what I'm really feeling like. I'm getting to know more of Lisa in this moment. So thank you.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's something you can easily forget too. Like, you just get in the motions of life, and you just you're not grateful for every day, you know? Yeah. And I think he's a constant reminder to me to stop and be present and, yeah, show up as your best self. I know you can't every day. Like, there's days when you're in the thick of it, in the trenches, as our beautiful friend Gemma would say. But he's a reminder to me, and I think it's a big one, that your time here is like, it's not don't take it for granted, you know. Yeah.
True. So much truth to that.
Cool. All right. I did it. I made it through that.
Good work. We're so proud of you.
Got there. All right, let's do this. The next one was a little bit of knowledge I received in my professional life. So it was, so this is with running my business Inkdrop. So I started Inkdrop when I was quite young. I was 24. I knew nothing about running a business. I just knew that I loved what I did, and it's what I wanted to do. I didn't have any question in what I wanted to do. And I was reflecting on it, that I think my sister's nagging paid off and that I could do it at that age. I was thinking like the sacrifice that's involved in starting up a business, and it was funny. On Sunday I took some time to just prepare for this talk, in the goal that I wouldn't cry when we were filming it, but alas.
Achieved.
I think Kim
Achieved the goal, tick.
Partially. I think it would have been full Kim K if I hadn't done prep. And I remember texting my sister Sarah, and I said, I'm working today, and I was, victim headspace about it, and she said, Lisa, you're not, and it wasn't about this, I was also doing business work, and she said that my brother-in-law, shout out to Mark, he's another big gifter of knowledge in my life, he said, he told my sister to tell me, you're not sacrificing your time, you're investing your time in your future self. So he mirrored what my sister had said to me earlier in my life, so it was a really good reminder. But yeah, there were times where in running business where there's been one sort of common thread or one common phrase that a man called Stephen O'Toole shared with me. So Steve operates Print House in Hamilton, and I met him as a student when I was studying at Wintec, and I was reflecting on this. So when you prepare your projects, you have to have them all printed beautifully and showcase them, and you sort of knew that all of the printers just like dreaded working with the students because the jobs probably made no money. These students come in, I'll speak for myself, I came in with like no technical knowledge of print really, you're still learning, and you're wanting to print all of these things on really inconvenient stocks, which are just a headache for printers. But Steve always gave me the time of day. Again, it's that gift of time. He always gave me the time of day. He always took the time to stop, teach me things. And he really showed, I think, really strong leadership in how he, in his offering of knowledge for me at that point in time in my life. And he shared one tidbit with me, and it was, you're only as good as your last job. And that's something that I've carried with me throughout my whole professional life. And it's something that we do at Inkdrop. So every job that comes through the door, it's not an expectation, it's we're lucky to have this job, and what can we do to make sure that we're delivering on every level, so that if it were our last job, would we be proud of it? And another word that comes up is care. Like, if this were our last job, have we really taken care of the privilege of being able to work on it? You know, like, could we have done it better? Could we have executed it differently? And even through that output, we will often meet with our clients at the end to see, like, how could we have done this better? As if it were our last job. What learnings were there from the way that we ran this project? So I think that was a really beautiful offering for Steve, and it's something that from Steve, and it's something that I've carried with me. And I was listening to more of your podcasts about how some people can hold their IP, especially in like the business world, close and not share it. But Steve was always really encouraging, and he offered a lot of his learnings or his knowledge in his professional world. And I thought I feel like that little tidbit of information has helped, because Inkdrop's 7 years old. I feel like he's really helped, his leadership has helped Inkdrop get to where it is today through like that one little moment. And it's amazing because we still work together today. Like we still print with him, which is really awesome. But yeah, so shout out to Steve.
Just about to say that actually. I'm like, yo, Steve, you're the man.
You're the man, Steve. Yeah. Yes.
I remember as a student going to print house.
Oh, yes.
Like, hi, can you do this for me? Knowing that it was the same thing, that they're like, oh my gosh, another student.
Just dreading it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's
but I
times
had a
where
really
like
positive experience with them. They were really good.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. They were always really welcoming.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I resonate with the like really obscure stock and like a really random size that was just such a pain for them to print one of.
Exactly. Real low units. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I was thinking about some of the questions I had for him at the time and just like face palm, like, oh my gosh. So the patience,
I know.
the patience too of him, you know, to because I remember he even showed me one of the printers at one time. Like, he really took the time to teach me. So yeah, really grateful to Steve.
And I really resonated with you were talking about care, and to me, an ethics of care is something that I really resonate with, because it's like you can feel that someone's gifting their knowledge to you as opposed to throwing it at you. Like
100%, yeah.
And the time element again, like time and an ethics of care. Oh, that's
Recipe.
that's a major key. I'm like, ooh. So I deeply resonated with what you were sharing there. And because I feel like in wanting to be loved and accepted, we also want to be approached with care. You know what I mean? Like there's this approach where it's like, do you actually care about where I'm at in my journey?
Yeah. And it takes knowledge to meet
100%.
someone. Yeah? You know, like he could have, And like in my personal journey, I've just recently learned about ego and soul. And, you know, I think it's your ego that can get in the way of having clear communication. Because he could have gotten really super frustrated, like, oh, another bloody student. Oh, she wants it on blooming paper. Bloody hell. But he wasn't. He was always really, always handled it really in a lovely way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yes.
Number 4.
Love that.
All right.
Number
What's
4,
that?
your fourth for please.
Number 4? All right, number 4. All right, we have entered motherhood.
Wow.
Watch out. This one was an interesting one, and I don't mean it to be critical of anyone. It's more, I'll try and share it from my personal experience. So, like, becoming a mum is a shock to the system. And it's almost like you have 9 months to prepare, but it still is almost like it's overnight, your whole world changes. Or in my experience, it was quite, it was a lot. And I feel like when you're pregnant and when you first have a baby, everybody loves to share their knowledge with you. Everybody has like tips, advice, all the knowledge to share. And sometimes you're just like, oh, but I personally loved receiving the knowledge because I knew nothing. I have a ton of nephews and nieces, but I still feel like I didn't really know a lot. But I've observed in the new motherhood space is that offering of advice or offering of knowledge can often be seen as, dare I say it, unsolicited advice.
Go there.
And I'm keen to more just have a conversation about this one. This was like my FAQ. But it was when are we in spaces and places where we are totally shut off to knowledge because it feels unsolicited? Even when the intention's good, like the intention offering it is meaning well, but the receiver has their walls up and it's seen as unsolicited advice.
Yeah.
I think it more exists. I think I've observed it more in the motherhood world socially, like in the social realm of like Instagram, social media. It's very much like, I have a baby, all of these walls go up. Like there's all these rules around what you can and cannot do, what you can and cannot say. Like, how would that look if we were more receptive and we leaned into our community versus withdrawing and putting walls up?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's different for everyone.
Yeah.
It was just an interesting concept. Like, I guess the crux of it is with knowledge and the sharing of knowledge. How are you meeting it? How are you viewing it? Are you open to it? Are you receptive of it?
Beautiful question.
It's a really interesting concept.
Yeah.
It's not
What
one
do
that
you
I've
guys
considered before.
What do you think?
It reminds me of like being a kid, and maybe this is like 15-year-old me needing a moment to shine. But like when someone tells you, like when I was a kid, if I had woke up that day, I'm like, I'm gonna clean my room today, and then my mum comes in and she's like, you need to clean your room today. I'm immediately like, no, I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to do it because I got told to do it. It seems like a similar thing of like, oh, I don't need that because I didn't discover it on my own.
Yeah.
Or it's not something that I sought out on my own. Therefore, it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Yeah. It reminded me of that. I was just laughing because even like as an adult, like after the South Island before I came overseas, I was home for a couple of months and the same thing happened. And I'm like a full ass grown adult. And my mum's like, clean your room. I was like, I don't want to do it now.
I was gonna do it, but now, nah.
I was gonna, but not anymore. And I told her, and she's like, why? I was like, I don't know. I just don't want to now.
That's a no from me.
It's a no. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I resonate with this from my own experiences, and I guess this is where same type of patterns and behaviors, but different scenario and nuance and scenario. So this is what I love about what you're saying. You know, everybody experiences differently. So obviously not a mother. So this is this is not the nuance, but but the patterns and the behaviors is what I feel is interesting in this because I've always been lately I've been trying to frame my knowledge of being like, if I'm sharing it, how does the knowledge that I'm sharing become an invitation or a reminder? And if it's not an invitation or a reminder, it's not a sharing. And I'm like, and especially if somebody didn't invite me into that, I'm not like, that was not consensual. Like that is not a consensual conversation where, that's why I'm like, I really like all respect to like adults who think that they have good intentions, but I'm like, nah, fuck that shit. Fuck that shit. Because it's not like I'm not this. Your good intentions. Also, what you say to me when you have good intentions is that I should tolerate your bullshit. And I'm like, I'm not gonna tolerate. Like, I get it. We have different ways of relating to each other, and you think that because of your age that you can give me good intention advice. But I'm like, fuck that shit. Like, it ain't it ain't welcome because I didn't ask for it, and because one, we both didn't have this consent to share gifts, you know, and we didn't have this consent. And I feel like that's the way that I'm relating to your story, but also realizing that I'm not a mother, and also that I wouldn't like I feel like from my proximity to my friends who are mothers, it's already so vulnerable. And especially
Yeah,
because, this from what I was gifted, there's this fear of not being enough as a mother. There's this fear of lacking in your motherhood skills, and then a fear of
yeah,
your baby, you're doing something to hurt your baby. And on top of all of
yeah,
that, you're going to get unsolicited advice from people who have not really experienced exactly what you've
yeah,
gone through, right? Like they might have like a similar feeling, like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. All mothers, wait until you have your third child, or wait until you have your, because I feel like that's the other spectrum of being like, oh, it's only your first
Or your
one.
sixth
Wait
child.
until you have your seventh child. The eighth one will be
yeah.
better. And in my head, I'm like, huh? So
It's
you're
so
gonna
good.
belittle my
Um,
experience because I haven't had, and in my head, I'm like, that doesn't meet me. That doesn't meet me. But also like so
yeah,
that's why, like, I was really inspired by your conversations around being like, if it is unsolicited advice, what part of me doesn't want to honor my integrity and listen to someone like us? What part of me is not in alignment with my truth and saying, because sometimes I feel like that happens the most in our most loving spaces of family, where they're like, they think that
yeah,
like loving me is to give me advice, and I'm like, actually, I just needed to say that out loud.
yeah. Well, like reflecting, because that's what I was going to bring up next was
Right there.
discernment. Like when can you, yeah, just like receive like an offering or like an unsolicited offering of advice. Like I often find if you were just to stop and listen, you can discern or have that inner leadership to take away what works and
Right.
doesn't work for you, or like say, oh, that's interesting, and then be like later, or just be like, yes, I will take this and I will take it on board. But like just reflecting on my sister Sarah, who would unsolicited, give me her unsolicited nagging to come on, work your school holidays, don't sit around, be earning money, you need to be saving, you need to be able to pay for XYZ. That was very unsolicited, but I'm grateful for it. Like how many years later, like 15, 20 years later, because it's helped me have discipline in my work. So yeah, like what are you missing out on? What knowledge are you missing out on by raising those boys?
Delicious.
But I hear you. Like there are times where it is like, Karen, leave me alone. You
Oh,
know,
love
there are
that.
like I think there's
Kaza, get
differences.
out.
Keza. But I think there are times I hear you, Malu, and I have had those times where you're like, this is getting nowhere. But I think there are some moments where you could put your walls up and could just be like, see ya. But there can be gifts in there if you like exercise patience to hear it out and just be able to discern what is and isn't working for you at that point
And
in
I'm
time.
curious as well, what is trust and proximity to what you shared? Because like what, like, well, for both of you, what is
Yeah.
trust? Because I feel like I'm only listening to unsolicited advice by the people that I trust and love, and that are continuously in
Yeah.
proximity and invested in my journey. And I feel like it doesn't even feel like unsolicited advice. I'm just trusting that what you're saying is for the betterment of my
Yeah,
future.
Yeah.
But yeah, what are your
That's
thoughts?
similar to what I
yeah,
was going to ask around like, is it different when it comes from your sister than it is from a stranger on the street?
yeah.
Like, and
I have had
why?
really, yeah. I reckon, like we touched on it before we started recording, is like sharing of knowledge. I think you can tell, like we were talking about, what's the common thread throughout all of your podcasts, and you touched on it with Darwinia, that it was around love. And I feel like when it's held with love and care, it hits differently. Like I've had times where I've bumped into random people at random times in my life, and they've given me an offering, call it knowledge or what you will. But I remember I was down at the beach with my boys, with my family, and I bumped into this woman who was also down at the beach with her family. and we got chatting, had like a really beautiful conversation, and I thought I was going through a challenging patch in my life, and she shared with me why her and her family were down at the beach, and they were like, man, it made what I was going through look like absolutely nothing. And when she was talking to me, I was like, SHIT, like, this is perspective for you, Lisa. Like, you've bumped into this woman for a reason. And then she said to me, she goes, I don't know why, but I just feel like I need to tell you this. There's strength in you. And she said, I remember that. And I was like, I've never had anybody, a stranger, talk to me in that way. And I was like, and at that time I really needed to hear that. And I was like, oh, and that's something that I've carried with me through challenges in life, is that I do have strength in me. But that was such a beautiful, and like, I didn't know this woman, had just met her, like, we just had like a 10-minute chat, and she said that to me. And I feel like when people share their knowledge, you can really tell when it comes from a genuine place of care and love. And that's when, I think that's when your walls come down, you're more receptive to it, and it does connect.
Yeah. It reminds me of what you were saying earlier too about receiving, like you have to be in a position where you can receive.
Yes.
Yeah. What's inspiring me about both your offerings is you got to make space to have space. And that's something that I feel like, for me, I actually always used to be like, I have so much space, and I'm like, actually I don't. I don't have that much space, especially in my thinking capacity. Like, in my thinking capacity, my storytelling capacities, I'm way too good at storytelling anything and everything. And I'm like, this is not the moment. This is not the moment. You need to make space, Malusia. Release the stories before you create new stories, okay? Release the stories.
I'm always here for Melusia's stories. I love him.
Yeah, well,
We're always here for your stories
yeah,
with your family too. They're always so good and make my day. Children, wonderful creatures.
Yes. Yes. Try not to put anyone off.
Yeah.
No, thank you for that. There is strength in you. Wow.
Thank
That's
you.
gonna be that's low-key gonna be that's gonna be one of my giftings to people. There is strength in you.
Yeah, I thought that's another thing I like, talking about your love language. Like, that takes nothing, it doesn't cost anything. It's just like, and that's what I'm working on, like how we talked about earlier, is if you think something that's, you feel like you want to say to somebody, and you're coming from a place of love, just share it. People often share their negative whinge. I can do this too. I will own that. But if you have something nice to share, why not share it? Because that person, like that woman, I needed to hear that at that point in time, and I am grateful that she said that to me. And again, I draw on it. And I'm like, yes, I have strength.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Number 5.
Let's go.
So this one is around life's challenges.
Okay.
Challenging times. So, like reflecting on my whole life, I've had a pretty lovely life. I've had a very lovely life. I had a lovely childhood upbringing, never really had any challenges come up for me in my life. And in reflection, I feel that was lovely, and I'm so grateful for it. But I think I hadn't had life experiences to build resilience. And so when I hit a really challenging patch in my life, I found it really hard to cope with because I lacked resilience. I had to sort of discover that within myself, and find the tools to move through it. So I won't share the details of it, but I'll just share the sort of learnings from the experience. So I went through, in 2020, I went through a really challenging patch in my life. And for a long time, I was in a victim headspace for a very long time. And I think it was because I didn't have the tools or the knowledge or the resilience to navigate it. So I sat in the victim headspace for, I think, about a year. So why was I was reading my notes? So like the reason I was in a super victim headspace was like the narrative I was telling myself was like, I'm a new mum, I've got like a 1.5-year-old, I'm pregnant with my second son. It was 2020, the year that was. So at the time, the country was going to a national lockdown, global pandemic. I was trying to run a business and set a team up to work remotely, make sure there's enough work coming through the door. The weight of like making sure that I could keep my whole team secure through it all, like the weight of that as well. And then I had this thing happen. And so I was just like, my whole world imploded. And I didn't have the coping, I just didn't know what to do. It was something that was completely unknown to me. And it took me a while, and like the breadcrumb that helped me get through it was like my support network, the knowledge of my family. So like huge shout out to my mum and my dad. Like they were really key pillars in getting me through it. And also Gemma Rose, listening to her podcast as a start, and then joining her self-leadership program, Know New Things. Gemma was another huge pillar in working through this challenge in my life. And you too were a huge part of working through that. So like you're like circling back to the start of our chat, your offering of I am, I can, I will, those 3 words helped me get through this really challenging patch. And I remember thinking, and it's that thing of like that knowledge or that support comes to you when you need it. I feel like it really does come to you when you need it the most. Like that woman telling me I had strength in me, like that was during this period. Like hearing that offering from you guys in the podcast, that really helped me. And I remember thinking, like I'd say it to myself in these moments of this challenge, and I remember it being like a plea, like, shit, I hope I am strong, I hope I can get through this, and I hope I will get through it. And I remember once this challenge had passed and I had found the strength, and I had found the self-leadership, and I had the support from the community to make it through, I was like, oh my gosh, it totally flipped. I was like, I did it. I was strong. Like I did get through it, and I knew I could. Like, and I was listening to a podcast that Gemma had with Robert Hollis, and he said like to build self-respect, it's by achieving you're overcoming these challenges and reflecting on them and being like, yeah, I did execute, I overcame it, and I got through it. And I was like, yes. So, and another person who has come into my life during this difficult time, and I heard this before I met him, was Michael Moore. It was on another one of Gemma's podcasts, but he said challenge is the garden. Hold on, I want to get this right for Michael. Mince my words. Challenge is the garden of growth. And that really, like that, yeah, so beautiful of Michael. And that was that shift of me from that victim headspace into the reframing challenges in your life and through a completely different lens. Like now I can look back on this whole life event and almost be grateful for it, which sounds really weird.
That's normal. Thank you.
But oh gosh, but yeah, I'm really grateful that it happened because I'm a stronger person for it. I've had so much growth through this period from all the learnings, all the personal growth, the people I've met, the community that I've met through this journey, and that invitation for like listeners, if you're like me, if you entered into a challenging period of your life and had a little resilience, sit with it. Like, I hear you. If you need to sit with in that victim space, I did it for a year. No judgment. Like, sometimes you just have to sort of feel what you're feeling. But see if you can sort of see it as a opportunity to grow and learn and develop, and what are you going to look like on the other side of this when you overcome it, because the self-respect you build through that process is going to be huge. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And there's another, I was listening to this song by Arcade Fire called Unconditional I, and he talks about like a lifetime of skin knees ain't so easy, but a life without pain would be boring. And I was like, yeah, like because I look back at Lisa before this all happened, and I love and appreciate her for all she was. But if I went through my whole life without dealing with challenges or difficult times, I think at the end of my life, I'd look back and I don't know what sort of person I would be. And I'm not sure if that's the sort of person I'd want to be. Like, I'd rather move through, I'd rather skin my knees and move through those challenges. And I think at the end of my life, what sort of person will I be, and what knowledge will I be able to share to my community from those learning curves?
Love.
Oh, Lisa, that was a hug. That was a beautiful hug.
Yeah. It reminds me, like, that we are a product of other people around us.
Yeah.
And I am grateful that I get to be in proximity to you.
Oh, that's really nice.
For you to be able to go through that and then to be able to articulate it so beautifully, and the points of contact where there was impact for you. I'm like, it's my friend, guys. She's my friend. I'm just so proud of you, man. I'm like so stoked that you made it through with such grace.
Oh, thanks, Kelsey. That means a lot. It was a journey, I tell you. There were some dark times. I tell you. Oh, but it's but I think that's been the biggest learning for me, is the power of reframing. I think is so important. And noticing the patterns that you have when you can fall into those victim headspaces. Because I definitely did. But I think also, like, being open to those nudges, like how I met you guys, how I met Juma, which you guys were such a huge support in getting through it, is being open to these things, like opening it when in a time where you want to retract. Like, you almost need to do the opposite to get through it.
100%. That's so smart.
Yeah, totally.
That is so smart.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's been one of my constant reframes as well, is that this work is actually really, really intelligent work. We just but like, people are like to me, I'm like, I feel like if you really know about the journey and how hard it is to get out of yourself and out of your own way, this is actually the most intelligent work I've had to do in my life, and I'm committed to continuously doing. But also, I love that I have a community of people that I trust, that are committed to doing their own work, so it just doesn't feel as burdensome as it is. Because I feel like at the beginning of the journey, I really felt like, oh my God, woe is me. I'm alone. No one else gets me.
No one understands.
No one understands. Everyone's against me. And then the more that I started hearing other people's stories, was the more that I realized that actually your heart was telling me of a true pain, and also true wisdom that came out of that pain, but a wayfinding that doesn't that just keeps on growing. And then in my head, I'm like, I think I'm attracted to people who care about enough about themselves to work through what is going on in their lives. And I'm like, I'm attracted to those people, and not in this romantic way, and probably is as well a romantic way, somewhere in there. But I'm just attracted to people who are willing to go there and ask the difficult questions of themselves. You know, it's so much easier to ask it of
Yeah.
somebody else to do the change. You can see it, and I'm like, oh yeah, great for you that you can see it. What are you doing at home though?
Mm,
What are you doing
100%.
when
Yeah.
no one's looking and no one's not, you have got
Mm.
no audience? What are you doing then? How are you treating and loving yourself? How are you honoring yourself? How are you in integrity with yourself? And I feel like that's what I'm hearing whenever you're talking about this relationship with us and Michael and Gemma and all these people that have, I feel like you said, come along at the right space. And imagine that we came into your sphere because of your talent, and
Yeah,
that's something that
beautiful.
without you investing into your future from 24 years old, we wouldn't have come this close to you. You know what I mean? When I think about
Yeah,
like the full timeline and all of the gifts that you've given us today, that investment got us this relationship.
yeah, yeah. It's wild,
Yeah.
eh? Yeah, it's so weird when you look at it like that. Yeah, I love looking back at who was it? Steve Jobs. He was giving, is it called a valedictorian speech about life can seem so messy, and it's not until you stop and reflect and look back on all the little dots and how they all connected to get you to where you are. I
Beautiful.
love
Mm.
that. Yeah, I love it, and I can see it in like my journey and through challenging, like that challenging patch of my life. Um, yeah, it was actually a really therapeutic process prepping for this and looking back over it all.
And thank you for doing your work. And I feel like that's something that
Yeah.
um, I really honor, and the person that you're growing in front of me and the person that you allow me to see. I'm so thankful that you're doing the work that you have decided, yep, it's time for me to ask real good questions of myself. Because half the time, it's
Mm,
going back to what you were saying before, giving yourself the permission to ask critical questions of yourself, such a hard journey to get to. And then even more harder to
Mm,
keep asking questions of being like, is this
mm-hmm,
integrity? Is this honor? Is this love for
mm-hmm.
me? Not anyone else, but I'm like, for me, is this integrity?
yeah.
And I'm like, I hear that
Yeah.
all the time
Yeah.
with you. And I feel like when we met you, and this has dual lenses to it. So please check me in if this is not how you perceived it or if this is not your experience.
Okay.
But you carried that hurt so well,
Aw.
like to a point where I didn't even like we didn't relate to you that way.
Mm,
We connected with this beautiful heart. We connected with all of the things that I thought was actually part and parcel of a beautiful relationship. And also hearing this side of you actually makes me appreciate that you showed up at the beginning more to build a
yeah.
relationship. And even through the trenches, we were with you, but also we weren't with you. You were showing
Mm,
up on your own terms,
Mm,
and that's
mm-hmm,
something that
mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
really honor. I really honor that you could show up even in
yeah.
the trenches.
Thanks, Mo. That means a lot. I think I was just so happy to be with you guys too. You brought out probably like yeah, you brought out the, I was just in a real happy place with you guys.
Uh,
And that's
Love
what I
meeting
love.
with
It's
you
like
guys.
we're deeply philosophical, crying and laughing all in one season.
Oh dear, promise me that you crop out those sections. Oh Lord, goodness me.
But yeah.
Oh dear.
What are you so what do they have in common though? So what is the relationship between your five knowledge bases that you've gifted us from your worldview?
Yeah, I was thinking about this. I reckon it's like we've talked about it a bit, and I've heard you talk about it with your other guests. It's like knowledge, I think, is the most potent. I want to find a replacement for that word because potent for me just means
Mm.
something else.
oh my god.
Okay, let's go with knowledge for me when it's shared with care and love and good intent. Um, it can really shape someone and move them in a really positive way. It really hits home the deepest, and when it's shared in that way. So I feel like it's like a recipe of like love, that it's gifted with love, it's gifted with care. The timing, I think it has a part to play, but then also how you receive it. You need to be you need to be receptive to it. So you need to be in a place where you're open, you're like listening, and you're present and you're listening for it to actually sit.
Beautiful.
Reach your program. I want to sign up to your program. Like,
Yes, please.
help me.
No, this is. If you want more of this, please go to www.gemmarose.com and sign up to know new things.
Would also recommend that 100% as well.
Yeah. But you're also the one that did the work.
Yes, I think
You
it's
signed
like
up to that and not been in a position to receive any of it. So yes to Gems and her program, because I've done it too and it's amazing. But also you, because you're the one that put in the work and put in the effort and showed up for yourself.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was talking to Michael earlier this week, and I was like, how good would it be to just be blissfully ignorant?
I've had that thought.
Yes.
I'm like, imagine if you just think of fuck.
I know. It's actually, it is so much harder to, but it's almost like a burden when you are aware you do know better. And you've got to pull finger and do something about it.
Yeah.
Honestly, my tap out ability and my savage is like, in my head, I'm like, when I'm done, I'm like, mentally, I check out to like Dubai on a yacht, and I'm like twerking in a thong. And that's my savage, tap out of being like, this is, that's when I'm in like full blown ignorance, where I'm like, I'm done with the shit, I'm done. And then I realized that my reality and my heart is not that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's like knowing your why. Like, if you're going to do all of this, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
And being clear on that. Like, for me, like I said, like me doing this with you guys, as hard as it was, and embarrassing as it was with my emotional moments. Like, I really do hope that there's tidbits in there that help someone else. And like for me, with doing like the reflection work or the inner work, it's so that I can show up as like the best wife for my husband, the best mum for my boys, the best leader in my business for my team, and hopefully that will flow on to like what my business can do for the community it sits within. So it's being really clear on why, because yes.
Thanks for doing the work, my friend.
Thank you, guys.
And thanks for being willing to come and share your stories. For you and your peoples to show up in the way that you have today, we are so grateful. And I know that your intention was for there to be golden nuggets, and there definitely are. So many in there. So many in there. And thank you for honouring Moses as well in this episode. It's incredible that he's able to not only have impact on you, but now on people that are listening as well. So kia ora. Thank you for that. If people have resonated with your story, or if people need some branding or graphic design or any of the stuff, which is amazing, Mahi, and you can see any example of that on any of our social media anywhere. How can people connect with you?
Probably through the Inkdrop Instagram account, I'd say.
What's the handle?
Inkdrop Design Co, I believe, or through our website, inkdrop.co.nz. But yes, no, very super grateful that you guys asked me, and love you too. Beautiful people.
Love you.
Love you and the whānau, and yes, Thank you so much. We started with a jingle. Can you help us with a jingle out? All right.
Yes.
The fuck you.
Fuck you.
Hey.
Fuck you.
The fuck you.
Fuck you.
Fuck you.
Fuck you, man. See you later,
Fuck you,
fellas.
kid. Bye.
Bye.